A few months back, when I was looking up for the definition of open source for a project, I came across this. And one thing that I noticed here was the word publicly accessible. And I realized that what is very often not taken into account is when we say publicly accessible and we say public, we also mean to include people who are non coders. And yet, most of the contribution processes that we come across for open source softwares, they're always kind of very focused on how to make code contributions. Um, and still, we don't kind of take into account that if we are building something for people, for everybody to use, and we are not doing it with them, it's going to have some consequences. I'm Vitika, a product designer with GitLab, and I work on the pipeline execution team. That means I look at the CI/CD stuff day in and day out. And I also kind of encourage designers around me and in the community to make more contributions to the open source projects. And today I would be talking about why it takes a community to craft an experience and why we cannot do that in isolation in any group. Decision fatigue. So when we are making a lot of decisions for ourselves, we often come across this feeling that we're very overwhelmed. And this happens because we get to live the consequences of the decisions that we're making. And our brain is like, okay, that's it. But what's very interesting about this particular phenomenon is when you're deciding for other people, the whole fatigue magically goes away. That's how much we love deciding for others, it seems. And this is because our brain understands that we are not going to be at the receiving end of the consequences of this particular decision that we are making. So why not? Let's go ahead with it. And so you would see that for many products that, everything comes with a user experience attached to it, right? Like be it a remote for your television, be the vending machine that you're using at the subway for dispensing a ticket. But you don't always have a say. You might have a say on the clothes that you're buying from a store when you get to like pick it up, touch and feel it and see if it's to your liking. But that doesn't work all the time. And for things of, especially for things of public utility, if you talk about that, then there's someone making a decision for you. And not just that, also this also goes for the digital products, most of the digital products, that somebody is sitting in a class building in Bangalore, San Francisco, they're making a bunch of decisions which are going to be impacting you very directly. And that's how this has been. I'm just trying to tie the current design process with this particular phenomenon. Like when we are making decisions for others, we don't feel as much affected by it. Now this is on a disconnected note. This is just a picture to give an idea about how overwhelmed you feel at certain points when you're doing something as petty as taking out a ticket and you get to see an interface such as this and just trying to decide, standing there for 5 minutes, like what to do next with this. Anyway, and now let's talk about alternate possibilities. Now, alternate possibilities as a concept, this means that, I'm just putting this in layman terms. It means that you're only as responsible for making a wrong decision as you're aware of like the alternate ways of doing it. Like you're only as wrong as you know like in what way could it be done right. And again, like if we talk about how this is happening in our everyday life with us is the user experiences with the products that we use every day. We kind of trust the people behind it, right? That they would be making the best decision for us. And they might even be, because they don't know what the alternate reality could be like. They are doing the best in their capacity with the kind of resources that is made available to them to make decisions for you. But human brain comes with its own limitations, and we have to agree to that. So in his essay, The Cathedral and the Bazaar, Eric mentioned that every good work of software starts by scratching a developer's itch, which is true. So most contributions, how they take shape is developer feels that there's a gap in the experience while using the softwares themselves, and that's when they come up with a code contribution, they get through the entire process, get it merged, and move on. And for this, the interface that they come up with, They only focus on that being workable for themselves, and that makes sense. But, and it's often considered that if somebody else has a problem with this, they should be looking at the source code because that's available for everybody to look at. They can just go and make changes themselves. All right. And building on that, Steve Pemberton, who's a public speaker, he kind of like observed this and he wrote that this means that if open source software is to appeal to people that are not producing it, the programmers are going to have to start to learn to scratch other people's itches, or people who are able to mediate for the non-programmers are going to have to find a way to tickle the programmers so that they will scratch it. Now, this is a little tricky because even though we are still talking a lot about developers, when we are making a software that we are envisioning this ideal use that everybody is going to be using that, like people worldwide would be using open source alternatives and would be sort of like moving away from the proprietary alternatives. So we have to make sure that when we are saying that we are making it for everyone, we have to make it with everyone. And we have to make sure that everybody who doesn't have the skill of coding or software development, they can have a say in the overall process, in the software development process, in the contribution process. We just can't leave them out. Then coming to experience design. Of course, this is all that I'm going to be focusing on. This is my area of expertise. And I have seen things being done in a strange way so far. And what I'll be sharing with you today is some of the practices that we have kind of come up with within our team at GitLab, just to make sure that when we are working through this entire software development process, which talks about the problem validation phase, the design phase, the solution validation phase, then comes the development and testing, we are leaving enough room for people from all areas who can remotely be users of GitLab to come and weigh their opinions, provide feedback, and be as much a part of the contribution process as a developer could be. So the first thing that I want to talk about is iterations. Now GitLab, I mean, we take pride in our handbook. And if you go to our handbook, you would see that we live by a set of values. But the one that I want to talk about today is iterations. Now, iterations as a value, how we translate this into our product development workflow practices is when we are working on a problem and the scope seems large, we always make it a point that no matter how much effort it takes, we break it down in scope. Now, what that does is when a problem, scope of a problem is small, then that encourages people to come and like dedicate their little time to that, talk easily about it, understand the proposals in a better way, and it doesn't demand too much from the contributors. And neither does it doesn't demand too much time, too much effort, and it just makes things easy because we are able to ship faster and get feedback faster. That's a little tricky because at every step that we take while breaking things into iterations, we have to make sure that we are still shipping value. This is one. And then comes public feedback issues. So more often than not, when we are not able to sort of get enough confidence in our design decisions, in our proposals through our regular research methodologies, we create public feedback issues for the features that we want our users to tell us about how they're liking it or not liking it, what their experience with this has been. Are they actually using it in a workflow that we anticipated them to be using this in? And this has been working pretty well. What we do is when we come up with a new feature, and like I said, we don't have enough confidence through our regular research methodologies, we send out a link through the alert banners somewhere in the product, like very close in proximity to where the feature lives. And this gives us a really good opportunity to engage with the community because people come to these issues. They talk about the problem and they get into the details of why things are not working out. And we also get an opportunity to recruit users from this particular issue and speak at length with them later in an interview process and get to understand what about the workflow that most people practice is that we have not been able to understand about, or what are the gaps that we are still not able to consider. So there's no room for assumptions like in the general user experience design process that happens in, I would say, regular setups, regular organizations. We take every opportunity to kind of combat the assumptions that we are keeping into consideration. We take every opportunity to make sure that we are not, like, the assumption doesn't get to live long. We get to clarify things as soon as possible, because also we have access to such like huge pool of community members who are such great resources and who think like who use the product every day, and they are sort of, they come up with brilliant ideas, brilliant feedback to contribute back to. The next one is transparent communication on design decisions. I have been doing this a long time. I've been a designer for about like 6-7 years now, but I have never experienced so much of accountability in the past. All the issues, by all I mean about 96% of the issues that I work on are public. They can be accessed by just anyone. And I have to make sure that I do the right thing from my side so that no matter who comes to the issue, who visits there, when they look at the design proposal, they should be able to understand why every small decision was made there. And that takes a little extra effort. That means I need to break down things even more than I would ordinarily will, because people who might come here, they might not have a product background. For example, they could be a librarian, but they should still be able to understand like why we did things that we did and what were the alternatives that we did not opt for, and what are the evidences that we have considered for sort of validating our directions, and so on. Lastly, one of the practice that we follow in our group, which is also sort of practiced in other groups, is posting a public kickoff video for every milestone. So GitLab releases like a new version every 21st of every month. That means we have a monthly release cycle, and that has been going on since many, many years now. Before we kick off the work for any milestone, my product manager and I, we record a short video that we put on YouTube that talks about like what are the premises of the development issues, the design issues that we'll be looking at in the upcoming milestone. And what that does is it sort of broadcasts the active premises for discussions to the community, and they're able to understand that, okay, this is an active area where discussions are sought, and if I go and participate there now, there's very likely that it would be acted upon quickly. And that happens quite often. So that's been working out pretty good for us. And these were just the 4 examples that I've included, even though there are a lot many things that we do process-wise in our everyday job. Yeah, and living by our ethos, everybody can contribute. I know this is, what I've shown is not perfect or close to perfect. What I really wanted to tell is that, through my story, is that we are working towards it. We're trying to make progress every single day, no matter how small that is. And eventually, I really hope that we are at a place where we get to inspire others to learn from our process for contributions. Yeah, that's it. And thank you so much.